Well, hello good people. Today's all about head gaskets. As usual around here, quality's been compromised. This time I'm filming with the wonkiest tripod ever. The getaway driver borrowed mine to film Clan Line last weekend and unfortunately didn't put it back in the study. I think it's still floating around in the back of his car. You'd think it'd be really easy to get a head gasket for a Model A Ford, but of course I'm using a small bore engine, not a big bore. I've tried a few different places and no one seems to stock AF head gaskets. A gentleman did find me someone who made new head gaskets and listed the AF gasket, but I'm a bit wary about buying gaskets that aren't made from original patterns. These are various Vauxhall gaskets I've acquired over the years. In fact, this is the one here that was fitted to the car when I bought it in 2002. In fact, Mr. Johnson up in Yorkshire made me a new one and it's been very good, but I think this was quite a good fit as I recall. I did spend some time messing around making sure that the fit of the cylinders here was okay. One of the problems with using gaskets or second-hand gaskets all the time is that as these things get used and compressed, of course this area tends to grow inwards and then someone else copies it, of course makes their gasket, and then when their gasket compresses it grows inwards even more. And with these Vauxhall engines, the pistons, you can actually see there, the piston has come up and hit the gasket and compressed it slightly. Not enough for it to fail, but even so, that's one of the problems with these gaskets growing. And in fact, this pattern gasket is far too wide here compared to here. So I'm a little wary about buying pattern gaskets off the internet because I might be spending £100 or more on something that doesn't actually work. I had a better idea. This is the AF head of my Ford engine. And although it's a different cubic capacity by virtue of being small bore, of course the head, stud layout, valve layout and general architecture is the same as the big bore motor. I thought I could draw around it and generally mess around making a pattern, and then I had a bit of a brainwave. I put a post on the Vintage Sports Car Club forum in the technical area asking if anyone had a scrap big bore gasket they might be kind enough to send me, and a super chap called Simon, who has a Model A Ford and does trials and everything, very kindly stuck this in the post to me. Thank you, Simon. I know it was months ago, but I'm just opening it now. I hope he's won every trial he entered. Seemed like a thoroughly good sort. Wouldn't take any money for the postage. I owe him beer at some point. And so this is a big bore gasket. Let's take it off the cardboard. Well, it's knackered, all right. Look at that. It's gone straight through between two cylinders. Perfect for my needs. Let's try it on. Now, convention, sometimes it says top on the gasket, but convention as I remember is crimped side down with a copper asbestos gasket. So there's the crimp. So obviously the block will be here. I've got the head upside down. So that sits like so. Very nice. It gives me all the waterways, all the stud holes. You can see how much bigger the normal Model A is. It's 3/8 of, no, talking rubbish. It's 7/8 of an inch bigger in bore than the AF, and so that land around there is nominally 7/16 of an inch, half an inch. Amazing difference. If you're wondering how I'm going to make the gasket, well, I've got two choices really. One would be to use one of these composite materials. This is a politically correct asbestos and I think some kind of metal. It was made years ago for Vauxhall. It worked very well, but I don't particularly want to use that sort of material. The answer I came up with is to make a solid copper gasket. So I've bought a big sheet of 1.2mm copper and I'm going to mark all the holes and everything and drill this, cut it out and then anneal it, and I reckon that's going to give me the best chance of making a decent gasket for the job. I think I'm going to do the stud holes first. I bought a new step drill. I've never really used these before, but the stud holes, or the studs, are 7/16, which is 11mm. Now this is a metric drill. It's the only sort they had in Screwfix down the road in Par. So I'm going to drill them 12mm. So I've actually put a mark on the 14mm bit to remind myself not to stab that through the gasket. So I'll do 14 stud holes first in 12mm. The real winner with the pillar drill is actually setting the depth control. It's on this side, it's just a knurled screw. And if I set it to the correct depth, of course I can't overshoot and drill the hole too big in the gasket. That's really very useful. I'm not intending to subject you to every drilled hole and saw cut I make, but I was just messing around marking up these different waterways and holes onto the sheet of copper, and I noticed something very interesting. This head has been blocked off here, and I just turn the camera slightly, here as well. Now that's very interesting because these heads used to get fitted as a sort of cheap way of raising the compression on the big bore engines. They used to get fitted to the big bore engines, and I know there was a mod had to be done, but I tried to find some more details about it and couldn't. This is obviously the modification, to block off a hole that goes from the block to the head. It's just some kind of steam hole or water hole, because with this big bore gasket, I mean, that's rather like a naughty girl's thong on the beach. It barely covers the parts. And of course, if that wasn't blocked off, there'd be water piddling out the hole and filling up the cylinders. The block I've got has got the hole in it, so this hasn't been used as a bodge to fit a big bore gasket on a small bore engine. This head must have been fitted at some point to a big bore motor, and in fact I can see a bit of a witness line where a big bore gasket has sat at some point. So I reckon someone tried it on a 3.3 litre. It was done in the day as a cheap way of hopping up a motor. I'm not going to unblock it. I did think, well, should I drill that out? It's obviously been tapped. You can see there's a bit of a witness of a thread there. Must have been tapped 5/16, and then a bolt wound in with the head cut off and then peened and filed flat. But there's enough other waterways through. I don't think putting that out is actually going to make any useful difference whatsoever. Never know, I might end up sticking this head on a big bore engine one day. So I think I'll just leave it as it is and carry on. Whilst I've got the head on the bench again, I'm just going to make a template with some flexoid of a combustion chamber. Then I can transfer that to the copper. So, Grandpa's toffee hammer. It's like you're having a guess, but it'll be near enough, I'm sure. That'll do. Find some scissors. It works for 1 and 3 when it's that way up, and 2 and 4 when it's that way up, due to the valve layout and the spark plug position. I better write on it before I forget. In time-honoured fashion, I pressed on and then realised I hadn't turned the camera on for a while. Doesn't help using this wonky tripod. Not that it really matters. The boy will be home soon. I can go and liberate the other one and give him a thick ear at the same time. Anyway, I drew round the combustion chamber area, and then, having removed the gasket, used my template. Now, I marked the template. Obviously this is up, everything is up, sort of head upwards at the moment. So 1 and 3 down. It's slightly out of shot, I think. So there we are, that's 3 down. And I just marked it. I did actually leave the gasket on while I just lined it up, so it is concentric here with the bore of the big bore gasket. So it's pretty good. And then drew round it and joined everything together. I've been cutting it out now. I'm using, probably spotted it on the bench possibly, the jigsaw with a metal blade in it, and it's really easy to do, but it's not very easy to film. Basically, I've got holes big enough here. It makes the most bloody awful racket, so I'm not going to try and film doing it. but it cuts like a knife through butter. It's really good, very quick. This copper is still in its hard state. Annealing it will be the last job really, because all the time it's hard. It's really easy to cut and file and relatively difficult to damage. Once it's been annealed, it'll be even softer than a soft thing and very, very easy to damage. Really, once it's annealed, it's got to go on the engine and have the head put on, because it'll be so easy to damage or mark or buckle once it's soft. Well, that's all the waterways cut out. I also filed this slot out a bit. I'm not going to cut the excess width off the gasket yet. This extra piece here is acting like a bit of a spine actually, so less chance of buckling the job. The next thing is to drill some holes so I can get the jigsaw in and cut these combustion chamber shapes out. I think the jigsaw will go straight round. Obviously I'll have to hang it over the edge and just G-clamp it, but I think with a bit of care I can get these out pretty much in one piece. Jigsawing is complete. Seems to have worked out quite well. I'm going to cut this out in a moment. I'm just going to do a little bit of titivating with a file, just tidying a few things up. But that's basically done. My tripod has been liberated from the back of the getaway driver's car, and so we're up here at about 5 foot altitude. The gasket fits a treat. What I did in the meantime, between the last take and this one, was to drill all the stud holes out to 14mm. That might seem a bit excessive, but it's sort of taking care of any inaccuracy, and there's so much land between the various parts of the gasket, I can just get away with that. So it goes on and off a treat. Another good reason for doing that, of course, is once it's annealed, it's going to be so physically easy to damage the gasket that it'd be good that it just drops on and off very easily if I just care to line it up properly and go like so. The fit is all good around the edges, and I'm going to go and cut the gasket to size now on the bandsaw. It's pouring with rain outside. If I move the camera down to the bandsaw shed, it means pushing the ride-on mower outside. That will get soaking wet. So I'm going to leave you here whilst I go and cut the gasket. That Denning bandsaw is the most marvellously splendid thing. I fitted a couple of new urethane drive tyres on the original wheels, but apart from that I've done nothing other than fit the occasional new blade. I've got quite a few different blades I use. This was cut out with a nice fine blade. Anyway, the job's done. I'm very pleased with the head gasket, but I think there are a few improvements that can still be made. This area is good. When it's annealed, the whole gasket will become very soft and obviously will compress quite a lot. Now this area I can see will compress and has room to expand, because obviously when the material is compressed down, it will expand outwards in every direction. And there's lots of room for it on this side to do that, but not so much on the top. By the top I mean this. Now my plan is to drill a few holes. There's so much extra space because of it being a small bore engine that I want to put a hole here, another one here, not necessarily very large holes, but because the material needs to compress and expand, it needs to go somewhere. And obviously it can't go anywhere if it's a solid piece of material. The middle of that can't go anywhere. It can't really expand outwards because the edges are, and because when these materials work harden as they expand, it won't go very far before it's work hardened and solid again. So I think it needs a few more sort of they're almost like lightning holes. They're not lightning holes. They're holes for the material to expand into. It will still seal around the edges, and in fact I think because it will have a slightly reduced cross-sectional area, or total surface area if you like, it will compress a little bit more. The final sort of test, if you like, is as to whether it works or not, is the gasket sealing or not sealing. Well, there we go. Plenty of land still around the edges for the gasket to seal, and more holes than a Roman orgy. I say, that's rather saucy, isn't it? I read on the internet, so of course it must be true, that one can anneal these things with a gas torch whilst placed on a piece of plywood, and the plywood won't catch fire. Now, I'm not sure I really believe that at all. I'm sure the plywood would catch fire eventually. I don't really want to fill the shop up with smoke. Anyway, I had a better idea. About 30 years ago, I bought a house that had economy 7 heating. It's actually quite good, but the heaters were fairly wonky. In the end, of course, I installed a large wood-burning stove, which meant I could liberate wood from hedgerows and skips and all manner of things and not have any heating bills. But I kept quite a lot of these bricks out of the old heaters, so they're perfect for sticking things on and heating them up properly. I've put a number 10 nozzle in the torch. I think that'll be enough. The main thing is to heat the gasket fairly evenly all the way around. Nice thing about oxyacetylene is it's a really good hot flame, so I shouldn't have any trouble getting it up to temperature. One can quench copper. It goes that nice kind of salmon pink if you quench it quickly. I'm not going to worry. It makes no difference to how copper anneals, whether it cools slowly or quickly. So I'm just going to heat it and then leave it. I've got the shed doors open. It's a nice evening. It's been quite a nice day today, so shouldn't get a build-up of smoke or anything. And they've been open for quite a while, so there shouldn't be any nasty vapours in here. There's no big cans of anything nasty. And I've got 2 enormous buckets of water as well, which I usually keep when I'm welding or doing any kind of heating up, just in case I set the shed alight. That's done. It's actually quite difficult seeing exactly the right colour, and possibly a little too easy with the oxyacetylene, almost to get it too hot. So it only needs to go to a sort of dull red, which I pretty much got everywhere. I think I'll just let it cool down for a bit. Then it needs all the scale taking off it as well. I think I'll go make a cup of tea and turn the gas off and just let that cool down. It was all heated to a dull red, so the colour change was about right. There is quite a lot of build-up of oxide. I'm going to try, isn't a particularly ferocious wire brush. I think I can just go around and get rid of the scale using a wire brush and a piece of Scotch-Brite. It certainly does feel quite soft. I have just pushed the gasket back down. I guess I'll probably take it off the fire bricks and do this actually on a normal piece of wood. But I think that is annealed enough. Well, I think that's the head gasket finished. I could mess around and titivate all evening. I was going to store it away, but actually there's no point. It might as well go straight on the engine. When I got this Ford motor, it was missing 3 studs. So the 2 long ones here and this one here. So I made 3 new ones. They're EN8. They're threaded, unified fine at the top and unified coarse into the block. So they're all done. I've smothered some grease just on the studs and around the threads as well, and every thread has had a die nut run down it, so they should be nice and easy for the nuts to go down. I did try nuts down all of them, it worked a treat. Now, bit of a philosophical question here. I did mark this actually, top and bottom. There we are, top It's actually stamped in there very gently, as to whether you put gaskets on dry or with some spray stuff or whatever. Now, I favour not using lots of gunjo on a gasket like this. I want it to obviously squidge down a bit as it's tightened. I don't know whether you heard that. That was an Airbus A400, one of those funny, well, Hercules replacement. I don't think there's anything that's actually a Hercules replacement. It was at about 300 feet and racing up the valley in the dark. I suppose they've probably got night vision goggles or good guide dogs or something. Anyway, so I haven't got gunjo on this, so let's just drop it in place. It is really soft. Keep my fingers out of the way. Convention when doing these cylinder heads is to start in the middle and sort of work out concentrically. So I'm going to start on this nut here. I'm going to do it particularly tight. Just pull them up just so. I was going to do this with the engine and the frame. That's the next job really, but I don't think there's any harm. I don't have to torque the head right down now. I don't have a torque wrench. I'll just do them so they're just about the same pull on the spanner, sort of calibrated arm. Right, so that's all of these up to here. So let's start with these end ones. I don't want to pull the engine off the bench. It really is quite wobbly. Not wobbly enough that I'm not going to do it though. Last one is this. Right, that's interesting. That one's loose now. So it has settled down a bit. They are all loose again. My pattern's rather going to pop, but it doesn't really matter. This isn't one of Elon Musk's rockets. I think you should ever let me mess around with that stuff. Right, I think that's everything pulled down again. Of course, it's very difficult to actually see any form of squidgification. that will do for this evening. I think we can say the cylinder head is basically on. I should probably block the holes in so nothing falls down the plug holes. I'll go and get some paper. I don't want to put the plugs in yet. Maybe I'll cut some rag just to put in each one. One rather useful thing, the offcut that I removed from the side of the sheet yesterday from the bandsaw is exactly the right width to make 2 gaskets, each with 3 holes and 2 stud holes for the exhaust and inlet. It's rather pleasing. Anyway, I think that's about it for the head gasket. We'll only know if it works when it comes to starting the thing up. Hopefully water won't piddle out everywhere. I've done my best, I think. We'll see what happens in the future. Thanks for watching.